Medical school can be expensive, but is it really just for the rich? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, I am JV, a second year medical student of St. Luke's Medical Center College of Medicine, William H. Quasha Memorial. In this vlog, we are going to have another episode of Real Talk, a podcast-ish, vlog-ish series where we talk about anything and everything under the sun. There'll be no bulls, no filters, no sugarcoats, just real talk. In this episode, we are going to try and discuss the potential answers to the question, is medical school really for the rich? Before we continue to the video, I hope that you guys can like this video and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's get it! So hello guys, welcome to Real Talk. So here with me are Jeremy and Hannah, medical students from St. Luke's, and Nicole from UERM. So today's topic is actually something that hasn't been talked about as much as other med-related concerns. Before we start though, we have to have a definition of what rich is all about. So do you guys want to start defining your own rich? Again, let's start with Jeremy siguro.
For me, kapag rich ka, obviously, you have enough for yung basic needs mo, ganyan. Pero if gusto mong mag-travel, you can nang hindi mo siya masyadong pinaprepare for. And if ever magkaroon ka ng emergency, hindi ka super panic kasi you can afford to deal with it. And that, for me, is rich ka na.
Okay. What about you, Hannah?
Same. Parang you have yung extra money aside from yung pang basic needs mo, yung bills mo, tapos you have extra for yung luxuries. Luxuries? like traveling, ano pa ba, yung mga goods, ganyan. Aside from your basic needs. I think that's already rich.
Okay, what about you, Nicole?
Same lang. Kasi for me, it's hard to quantify what rich really is. Kasi diba sa pamilya, we don't really compute for the finances. So being rich is, yes, providing for necessities, but also having that ability to purchase your wants without having to think a lot about it, diba?
So yun, very good definitions naman yung mga nabigay ninyo. And for me, actually same lang din nung definition. Pero according to Philippine Institute for Development Studies, kasi like, this is research ha. So 219,140 yung dapat monthly income ng isang family for you to be, called rich. Ayun, with that said, what's your answer to the question for today? Like, is medical school really for the rich?
No.
Yes?
Yes and no.
Okay, very intriguing answers naman. Grabe naman sa mga guests natin. Okay, so now it's your time naman to defend your answer why you guys said yes, no, ganon. Okay, let's start with Hannah.
Actually, yung answer ko depends, but mostly no. Pero actually, kung mas specific, depends where. So I answered no kasi upon research, wow, na ano, yeah. Parang there are other med schools with really, really low tuition fees, such as there's this school sa Mindanao, it's called Mindanao State University, Marawi. It's where my parents graduated, so they know about it. And then they were sharing to me na cheap lang yung med school there. It's 12K. So it depends talaga where you wanna go. Outside the metro is definitely cheaper. But then you also have to consider having to have lodging. If you're from the metro, then you're gonna go outside the metro. And then another thing I noticed is yung parang yung top 10 schools based on passing rates is mostly here kasi.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing na you're gonna have to consider is yung quality of education mo.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, it definitely helps to have a really good school performance because that's usually the criteria for scholarship. So my answer is no because actually may scholarships naman. But on the facade, syempre pag first mong sinerch, tuition fee ang lalabas. Tapos minsan yung scholarships, given lang siya to a very select few.
Mm-hmm.
So, hindi siya masyadong heard of and most people really pay tuition.
Thank you, Hannah Nish. What about you, Nicole?
For me, yes siya because as said nga, diba, let's say 160,000 per sem is not a joke. So for some families that can really provide a lot already, diba? So it's fairly a big amount. And also marami ka rin iisipin pag med school eh. Yes, lodging, dorm, food, baon, yung mga kape mo, diba? So yes, maraming gastos sa med school. But also no, because there are a lot of opportunities naman for scholarships. I agree. And for me, if you really have that dream, diba, you will exhaust everything to go into medical school. So, no, kasi parang ginagawa naman ng paraan. But yes, kasi mahal pa rin siya kahit ginagawan mo ng paraan.
Thank you, Nicole. Jeremy, thoughts?
Yung sagot ko, I agree with them. Pero I said yes to the question kasi despite having state universities and scholarships, etc., parang for the most part, yung scholars and those in state schools are smaller then. Like, that opportunity isn't as wide for the rest of us. So parang yung med school itself isn't accessible. Masasabi ko talagang it's a privilege to be able to get into med school. Kaya ko masasabi na yes. Kasi I feel like wala akong backup data dito or anything, but I feel like na majority pa din ng magpo-pursue ng med is, well, not necessarily rich, but kahit papano kaya. And hindi siya, like if you're poor or nasa lower income bracket, medyo hindi talaga siya magiging option despite pa ng scholarships and such. Multifactorial, pero hindi lang siya magiging as balanced. That's why I said yes.
Okay, yeah, for me also, I would say yes. Kasi it doesn't end kapag nagbayad ka ng tuition. In fact, it starts there pa lang. Like, yung gastusin mo will add up after you pay your tuition fee, which is a big chunk already. That's why I said yes also. So, yung more interesting question is, why do you think this notion has emerged? Do you guys have an idea why? Let's start with Nicole.
I think this notion has emerged due to the lack of opportunities rin. Because, di ba marami sa atin hindi nakaka-access din naman sa education. So I think it's also the lack of knowledge about it, which makes this notion, pang mayaman lang naman yung med school. And also I think when we see or encounter medical students and also doctors, di ba? Sometimes when we ask, mahal talaga mag-medical school, but it is not impossible.
Jeremy?
I think the notion emerged kasi beyond dun sa financial na expectations na expensive, costly din siya in terms of time. Kasi supposedly, for example, only child ako. Supposedly, dapat nag-work na ako. Dapat umaambag na ako sa sahod ng bahay namin. Ganun. But I'm not. For the next 2 to 3 years pa kasi I'm still a medical student. So beyond sa gumagastos pa sa akin, hindi rin ako dumadagdag, whereas dapat nagdadala na ako ng income sa bahay. And I feel like yun yung notion na nagpe-prevail din in the Philippine context. Kasi I mean, ayaw man natin aminin or if we're willing to admit it or not, medyo investment ang children dito sa Philippines. And syempre, after ka expected mag-aral, you're expected to contribute na sa expenses ng home. And if you can't do that kasi mag-aaral ka, parang medyo burden pa yon lalo. Kaya tayo rin may notion na med school is for the rich lang. Kasi afford mo both financially and ng time.
Okay, Hannah, your thoughts?
Same naman with Jeremy also, na it's a privilege really to be extending outside of yung basic years of learning, which is up to college. Diba yun naman yung conventional kasi. So parang afford mo ba yung extra? So parang if afford mo yung extra, then siguro mayaman sila kasi kaya pa nila ng more years kahit nag-age na yung parents, ganun. So probably may savings sila. So yeah, and also because of the practice, which is prestigious, diba? I mean, na parang you see the doctors, when you think doctors, you usually think they're living very well. So you would think na to get into that, you would also have to have been living well.
Yes. And usually kasi, feeling ko this has emerged also kasi usually I'm not generalizing people naman, pero like usually, yung mga nagdo-doctor, especially like marami sa mga classmates din siguro natin, ay galing sa family of doctors. Like sobrang onti lang talaga or like siguro nowadays medyo dumadami na. But usually they came from a family of doctors. And you know naman yung sinabi nga ni Hannah, like may prestige kasi na doktor yung tatay ko or doktor yung mga magulang ko. They would right then and there assume na you guys are well off, like rich, ganyan. Kasi afford na ng parents mo noon pa na mag-med school sila, tapos afford mo na rin now because of them. Ganon. So I think that's one of the reasons why my notion na med schools for the rich, ganyan. So since we're talking about, privileges nga, ganyan, is it impossible naman for the less fortunate people to get into medical school or to survive medical school? Because, getting in is the easiest part of medical school itself, ganyan. I know that you've discussed it kanina, but if you guys would like to expound on it pa. Let's start with Hannah.
So for me, I am the only one who answered no. There are ways if you really want to. There are many, many, many schools. I searched yung PRC and there are actually 49 medical schools. So I think mas madami pa yung outside NCR. Well, di ko na binilang, pero feeling ko lang. Feeling ko mas madami yung outside NCR which have mga 5-digit tuitions lang. So that's a big load off. Another way really is to have good school performance. I think that's a really, really, really big help. Kasi diba, madaming scholarships na academic talaga. Yun. Although parang ang hirap niya i-impose na parang galingan mo sa school, ganyan. Pero ayun, if dream mo talaga and sa tingin mo hindi mabubuhat ng finances, kailangan talaga bawiin dun sa academics kasi yun yung isa pang malaking factor na pwede talagang matulungan ka.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Jeremy?
My answer is medyo complicated kasi I feel like, yes, it is impossible. Obviously not for everybody kasi hindi naman tayo makakapag-generalize. Pero I wanna say yes kasi I feel like it represents majority nung nasa bracket na to na hindi talaga siya magiging option. Kumbaga, yung mga tao in this bracket na makakapunta sa med school, maraming stars yung nag-align for that to happen. They were in the right place at the right time type of thing. I feel like may news article at one point na lumabas na this person, very poor siya, pero work hard and got into med school, ganyan. Tapos doctor na siya ngayon. Tapos sobrang amazed tayo. Kaya tayo amazed kasi never yun nangyayari. Kasi kung more than 50 people naman yun, then that's an average thing. Tapos parang hindi na yun something na remarkable. Pero remarkable siya kasi hindi nga talaga siya nangyayari. Kaya for me, it's impossible for them. Kasi ang daming hurdles talaga. Despite the DOH scholarships, despite state universities, katulad nga ng nabanggit ni Hannah na hindi kasi talaga siya magiging enough. Kahit gustuhin mo siya enough, kahit you work hard, for some people, it's not really going to be an option. Meron pa rin talagang roll of the dice of privilege and circumstances na aspect na at the moment, unfortunately, hindi siya talaga option. And for me, yung scholarships, syempre meron yung parang academic prerequisite na kailangan stellar ka. Na ako, I'm not relying on a scholarship, pero that, in my opinion, that doesn't mean na hindi ko na-deserve ng opportunity makapag-pursue ng med school if I wanted to. Parang in an ideal world, kahit hindi ka super bright, pero you want this, you have the discipline for that naman, you should be able to get into med school sana. Kasi you're gonna work hard for it anyway. Pero yun nga, you have to be smart, you have to be resourceful. Ang dami-daming factors ang kailangan maging suitable para lang siya mangyari. Kaya my answer would be yes pa rin, despite yung mga scholarships na na-mention ko kanina.
Okay, Nicole, what are your thoughts?
Ako, no. It's not impossible. Kasi I myself is considered to be financially unstable. I am a product of a single mother. So, isa lang yung nagpo-provide for me. So, imagine the burden. How much every month my mom is always thinking about how are we going to pay 30,000 per month, around that amount. But, yun nga, multifactorial pa rin, I agree. Kasi, syempre, if nagipit ka naman sa isang buwan, if you have credit cards, ganon, if you have people or relatives who will help you, depende pa rin sa situation ng tao, siguro. But as for me, same din, hindi ako stellar, hindi ako in an academic scholarship for us na average student. De, joke lang. You got into med school because you are bright, no? We are all bright. But I have a 20% off in tuition fee. It's called grants in aid. So, if based on our family income, dun yun kinocompute ng school. But, di ba, isipin mo, let's say 160,000 per sem and then you take off 20% of it. Saan mo kukunin yun, let's say around 30,000, di ba? That's still a big chunk of the discount for us na medyo hirap sa med school. And also, there will be people along the way. Kahit sa med school, nakakakilala mo lang. Yung mga sinasalihan mo organizations, fraternities, sororities, they will be there to help you if you need them. Yun. So I think also joining such organizations or institutions also help you to achieve your dreams.
Wow, grabe naman yung mga sagot ninyo sa question. So, before we end, I wanna ask if nag-change ba yung perspective ninyo based on the discussion or is it the same thing? So, what's your final answer to the question, is medical school really for the rich? Hannah?
It would still be depends. Change ko na lang from no to depends.
Okay.
Depends which medical school.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Nicole?
Still, yes and no, subjective, but mostly no. It's not impossible.
Okay. Jeremy?
I'm gonna change the question. Med school is for the privileged, hindi siya for the rich.
Okay, so that's the end of our Real Talk for today. Thank you guys so much for allotting your time for this discussion. Super duper appreciated. So there you have it, guys. I think we have discussed the topic at hand enough for you guys to have an understanding of whether or not med school is really for the rich. That's it for today, and I'll see you on the next one.